Hi, my name is Bill Thomas, and I'm here today to talk to you about my memoirs that I wrote about my black walnut experiences. My black walnut story begins on the third Saturday in October 1985. I was 38 years old then. It was a beautiful day, and some friends of mine and I were in Indiana County, Pennsylvania, archery hunting. We were posted on the edge of a wooded lot overlooking a large cornfield. This was the first time we hunted in this area, and one of our hunting companions knew the property owner. He got permission in advance to let him know we were going to hunt there. Since the owner was a farmer, he suffered much crop damage from the wildlife in the areas he farmed. Unfortunately, we were not able to help him out that particular day. I only saw 7 deer myself that day, but they were well out of my shooting range using a bow and arrow. I still use a recurve bow then and limited my shooting distance to a comfortable 40 yards. The excitement I got out of that particular day was while I was posted in a tree. It was easy to climb and had limbs jutting out in different angles. I was comfortable sitting even though I didn't have a store-bought tree stand. What really made things interesting was the fact that the tree was next to the one I was sitting on was a black walnut tree. Before then, I never heard or saw a black walnut tree. What really got interesting was watching a big gray squirrel shooting up that tree and going out on a limb to what appeared to be a round green ball hanging down on the end of a branch. The squirrel would then pick the green ball off the branch with its front paws, put it in his mouth, and take it to a bigger branch. While sitting on its back side, it would use its 2 front legs and paws to hold the ball. With its teeth, the squirrel began chewing the green hull as it rotated the ball. Pieces of the ball would fall onto the ground as it got smaller. When the squirrel was done chewing the hull, he had a black walnut. He would put the nut in his mouth and get down the tree and scamper out of sight. Within a few minutes, this is a picture of the black walnuts that he was picking up and bringing up in the tree to actually take these hulls off and get to the nut inside. Within a few minutes, I would see movement on the ground as a gray squirrel was coming back to the walnut tree to start the process all over again. I must have watched this procedure for an hour and a half. It was getting later in the day, and the squirrel quit coming back. My friends were starting to gather for the trip back home. Before we left, my curiosity got the best of me. I went to the black walnut tree, picked several nuts off the lower hanging branches, and put them in my hunting vest pocket. When I got home later that evening, I was really tired and ready for a hot shower. So I just left the nuts in my vest pockets overnight. The next day after lunch, I decided to see what I brought home in my vest. That's when I discovered the green hulls were turning black and getting softer. To my surprise, the black liquid was coming from the hulls and leaving a permanent stain soaking all the way through my vest pockets. After removing the hulls from the nuts, my hands and fingers were stained for the next 2 weeks. Later that Sunday afternoon, I decided to take the nuts over to my cousin Lee's farm in Saxonburg, PA. I figured he would know what I had, and I was right. Lee informed me that they were black walnuts and asked me how many I wanted. He took me outside and pointed to 15 black walnut trees in his pasture field. Every tree was loaded with black walnuts because it was a very good crop that year. I was born and raised a city boy in my growing years in the borough of Munhall, bordering Homestead, West Homestead, and West Mifflin, PA. Even though there were few woods in the area around, I couldn't go to those places because I was highly allergic to poison ivy. I was so allergic to poison ivy, I got a dose of it sled riding over a hillside one year in January. My mother took pictures of me on our back porch with the snow in the background just to prove I got poison ivy in the wintertime. I remember one summer all the boys in our neighborhood decided to build a log cabin in one of my friends' yards. Because of my allergy, I couldn't go into the woods to help cut the trees and drag them to my buddy's house. So it was my job to prepare the logs to build the log cabin. I still got poison ivy from the oil on the trees I was preparing for the log cabin. After Lee showed me all the black walnut trees in his pasture field, I went on a gathering spree to get as many nuts as I could before the squirrels cleaned them out. I would step on the hulls one at a time in rubber boots and to expose the nuts. Then I put the nuts in a 5-gallon bucket to carry them out of the fields to my truck. I took the nuts home and washed them in a tub of water to get most of the stain off of the nuts. Later on, I found any of the nuts that floated in the water. They were no good and got discarded. I would then place the nuts in a rack that I made in a single layer to dry. Once the nuts were dried, I would place them in an onion sack for storage. When I first started to harvest the nut meats inside the walnuts, I found just how thick and hard the shell is to crack open. I broke them with a brick, then a hammer, only to find out I was smashing the nut meat inside and would get pulverized. After trial and error, I found the best way to crack the shell open was to put them end to end in a vise. After cracking the nuts once in the vise, I would take a pair of diagonal pliers and nip away at the rest of the shell to extract as large a piece of nut meat from the thick shell. It has taken much time and patience and technique, but over the last 28 years, I've gotten good at it. I was really glad I took the time to gather as many black walnuts from my cousin's farm as I did that year. Most recipes call for 1 cup of nut meat. Just out of curiosity, I counted how many nuts I had to crack, extracting the nut meat from the shell to get 1 cup. It took 50 nuts. After cracking and cleaning all the nuts I had that year, I believe I had approximately 20 to 25 cups of black walnut meat that year. Now, what was I going to make with the nut meat? I went to our local library in Mars, PA, and found a couple of books about black walnuts. One of the books had a recipe for black walnut pie. I wrote down the recipe and took it home for my wife Pat to look over. It looked easy enough to make. Christmas was 1 week away, so we decided that along with the traditional pumpkin pies, we would add a black walnut pie to our dessert list. The walnut pie was a big hit that year with most of our family members, though not everyone liked it. I realized how distinct the flavor black walnuts have because of that experience. I truly believe either you like black walnuts or you don't. There's no in between. The flavor is that strong. My wife and I tried other recipes for the rest of the nut meat we had remaining from that year's crop. We made fudge, which to this day is still the favorite to those who eat our black walnut treats. We also made black walnut bread, cookies, and seasonal candy treats. We make candy at Christmas, Valentine's Day, and Easter. I also enjoy black walnuts in our pancake mix with pure maple syrup from Marsdale, PA. The maple syrup is another story in itself. After running out of walnuts from that year's crop, all I could do was research and plan for next year's fall harvest. I found out there is a small town in Spencer, West Virginia that has a Black Walnut Festival every year in October. The festival is a 4-day event and still goes on today in September. And in 1986, I made plans for Pat and myself to attend the festival from October 9th to October 12th. Spencer, West Virginia is located 65 miles west of Interstate 79 on Route 33. It was a long, winding up and down the hills of Black Walnut, or Black Country. Up and down the hills of backcountry roads. About 5 miles before we got to Spencer, we came upon a local feed and nursery store. We stopped there to stretch our legs and get something to drink. We noticed some activity on the side of the building in the parking lot. People were lined up waiting their turn in pickup trucks and trailers to unload their containers full of black walnuts at a dumping platform. From the platform, the black walnuts would go up a conveyor belt into a hulling machine that would separate the hulls from the nuts. The hulls would fall in a cart and be discarded, and the nuts would fall in a big onion sack. They were being piled in rows alongside the feed store. The sacks would be weighed, and the feed store would pay the people who went out in the fields and along the roads to pick up the black walnuts that had fallen on the ground. Harvest time for the black walnuts is from September until December, when the mature nuts are ready. I asked the store owner what became of the nut piles alongside the building. He informed me that in November, tractor trailers would load the sacks to be sent to a processing plant in Stockton, Missouri. The Hammonds Products Company is the only processing plant in the United States for processing black walnuts. After getting the address and phone number for the Hammonds Company, we finished our trip to Spencer. The festival was very well organized. There was something different to see and do each day. At the armory in town, they had contests which everyone could enter for judging the top 3 ribbon awards. People entered all kinds of baked goods and candy recipes for judging. I also found and bought a black walnut cookbook made from recipes mainly from the folks in Spencer and surrounding communities. They also had a Wood-Mizer portable sawmill on display at one of the ball fields. Some men were there demonstrating the sawmill and were cutting boards of different widths and lengths from black walnut logs. I was able to buy several boards and brought them home to dry. Once we got home from the festival, I got into full swing of collecting black walnuts, not only from my cousin's farm, but from other trees I discovered in our area. It was another good year for black walnuts, and I took advantage of picking, hulling, washing, and drying the nuts. I came to realize it is best for the nuts to dry out and mature in the shell. I don't start cracking and picking out the nut meat until mid-January or the beginning of February. When the meat dries in the shell, it also shrinks a little. This makes it easier to remove from the thick shells. Also in my learning years, I found out that not every tree produces a good crop. even when it seems like there are many nuts on the tree. I was hunting in the woods behind my house and I found a huge black walnut tree about 100 yards down in the woods. I could not believe how many nuts were on the ground. I started making a trip with 2 5-gallon plastic buckets to gather the nuts. After making 15 or so trips back and forth, I took off the hulls, washed the nuts, and dried them out. A couple months later, I began to crack the hulls, only to find out they weren't any good. I learned a valuable lesson that year. If the squirrels are not gathering nuts, just let them lay there. They are no good. I don't know how they know, but they do. After that time, anytime I go to gather nuts, I always break open a few to check the nut meat inside to make sure I'm gathering good black walnuts. I worked in a glass container factory for 27 years in Glenshaw, PA. Some of my co-workers wanted to try my black walnut baked goods and candy. They really enjoyed the treats and asked me if they could buy some of my products to take home and share with their family. We agreed on a price, and so I began a long time of selling black walnut baked goods and candy to fellow employees, friends, and family members of our own. The baking and candy making became a seasonal event, starting at Thanksgiving and ending at Easter time. We sold pies, nut bread, fudge, and cookies at Thanksgiving. During the Christmas season, we sold black walnut caramel turtles using our own black walnut caramel filling recipe, and we also sold pies, fudge, nut bread, and black walnut solid chocolate candy poured into Christmas molds. For Valentine's Day, I have 2 heart-shaped molds, one larger than the other. The large mold holds 2 pounds of fudge, and the smaller mold holds 1 pound. It was perfect because my fudge recipe makes 3 pounds of fudge. I made chocolate and white chocolate fudge, both being big sellers. At Easter time, we made the usual, plus the turtles and Easter eggs with the caramel walnut filling inside. I even had one customer who would buy 1 pound solid chocolate Easter egg and filled with black walnuts mixed inside. He would buy one in milk chocolate and one in white chocolate. We also had small molds we would make at Easter with bunnies, crosses, eggs, and chicks. For those different holidays, I would take orders so I knew just how much baked goods and candy we had to make. It didn't take long to realize I could not keep up with collecting enough nuts to supply all of our orders. I decided to write Hammonds Products Company in Stockton, Missouri, to see if they could help me with my situation. Within a week, I received a phone call from one of their sales representatives. After explaining my problem to him, he told me I could buy nuts from the company in bulk at a reduced rate. I decided I should buy 2 different sizes because of how I was using the black walnuts. I bought the large and fancy nuts for making my fudge and nut bread in 35-pound bulk packages. I also bought small black walnuts in 35-pound bulk packages. The nut meat I bought from Hammonds and the ones I harvested were enough to fill my orders for the season. I did the business with the same salesperson for a number of years until he took another sales job with another company. He went as far as to inviting Pat and I to come down to visit and tour the Hammonds plant. Because of our friendship, in November of 1989, I took him up on the offer and went to Stockton, Missouri. We also took my daughter Patty with us. He was a wonderful tour guide and explained everything in detail about the processing black walnuts from start to finish. We learned more about black walnuts that day than we would ever have learned on our own. I would like to share some of those lessons with you now. We have learned that the Hammonds Company, nothing is wasted or thrown away. The green hulls are used to make black walnut stain in the paint industry and also for fertilizer. We were also told the hulls were used in colonial days for making ink. The nuts go through a drying process in ovens to enhance the maturing of the nut meat. After the drying period is done, the walnuts go directly to the factory for cracking. The cracking is done by steel rollers that the nuts pass under to break the shells in smaller pieces. Then the nuts are poked with long steel fingers that pop the nut meat out from the shells. The nut meat goes along a conveyor belt through a series of machines that checks for size and color of the nut meat. Only the meatier nuts with light brownish tan color are used for human consumption. The poorer quality meats are discarded from the conveyor belt. After the nut meat has gone through all the machines, the final checkpoint is passed by inspectors who make the final decision on the quality of the meat. The nut meat that is not considered best quality is collected and sent to another part of the building. There, the discarded nuts are put through another machine that mixes the nuts and cracked corn at a high rate of speed. High pressure fuses the corn and the nuts and comes out in pieces, falling into bags to be sold for animal feed. The feed the company sells comes in 50-pound bags and is called Cornwall. It is a high-protein food source for cattle, pigs, chickens, and even used as dog food. The salesperson gave my daughter Patty and I a piece of the Cornwall to eat before he told us what it was and how it was used. It had a good flavor. I bought a 50-pound bag to bring home for our dogs, and they loved it. Since I said nothing is wasted, you're probably wondering about the black walnut shells. The shell products they harvest at the factory are a large part of the business. The shells are ground into various sized grits and used for multiple purposes. They are used for metal cleaning and polishing in the automobile industry, jet engines, electronics, circuit boards, and ships. They are used in the cosmetic industry for cleansers, rough agents in soaps, and dental cleaners. When the Statue of Liberty was restored in New York Harbor in 1984, she was sandblasted with black walnut shells. It cleaned her finish without scratching or wearing away any of her surface. The shells are also used to clean brass bullets, casings for shooters who reload their own bullets. I bought a 50-pound bag of that size media to sell at home to sportsmen who reloaded their own ammo. They were amazed at the difference the black walnut shells made because they always used corn in the past. When we went to Missouri, we stayed in a rustic cabin at Stockton Lake Park. It had a huge lake, campground, and boating area. We rented a pontoon boat and relaxed on the lake for the day. The only thing we were missing was our bathing suits and fishing poles. Our trip to the Hammonds plant and Stockton Lake was very enjoyable and educational. When we got back home, my cousin Lee realized how much enjoyment I received from harvesting black walnuts. He decided to pass down to me a homemade hulling machine that he made himself years ago. This is a picture of the hulling machine. I'm at the machine loading nuts in, and that is my grandson Lucas. He was out there helping me. He's at the switch, because when you dump the hulls in the machine, you only want to let them rotate about 2 cycles or it'll start breaking the shells. So whenever Luke saw me nod my head, he would turn the switch off. And this is a picture of my grandson and Luke back in our later days, still hauling the black walnuts. And you can see how dirty and messy of a job it is. We even get these Tyvek disposable suits to discard when we're done. The only thing I had to supply was an electric motor and a V-belt. The machine is nothing more than a drum that rotates inside a stationary drum on the outside. The outside drum has slots cut on the bottom with a trap door that lets the walnuts fall out. Once the hulls are pushed through the slots, they fall into a collection bucket. After collecting the walnuts, I place them on drying racks that I made and hose the rest of the hulls still on the walnuts. I have to cover the racks while the walnuts are drying so that the deer, squirrels, and chipmunks don't steal my products. I still use the machine today, and my grandson Lucas helps me process the walnuts. Lucas is a big helper and has come to appreciate the black walnut harvesting, along with the benefit of enjoying all the treats he gets to eat. I also get help in the fall when it's time to gather the nuts for my granddaughter Madison and for my wife Pat. This year, Patty and my grandson David found some nut trees in Monroeville area where they live and brought them out to the house for processing. David, who is only 5 years old, was all excited and wanted to know if he and his mother got enough black walnuts to make a batch of fudge. I assured him that they did, and he was delighted. Through the years, making and selling our treats at the glass factory, I got a personal reputation for my fellow employees. Every year they call me Willie Walnut, that the nickname is stuck to this day. One of my friends asked me one day if I knew where he could get some marble or granite, and I asked him why he wanted it. He explained to me how he picked up an old fire nozzle at a flea market. He made a table lamp from the nozzle, but needed something for a base to mount it on. I told him I did not know of any marble or granite, but I had some black walnut boards I picked up in West Virginia. I knew black walnut was prime lumber used in the furniture business. I gave him what he needed, and he made 2 octagon pieces, one larger than the other, and placed the smaller one on top of the larger one. He then attached the nozzle upright on the base and used the fire nozzle handle as a switch to turn the lamp on and off. He was so pleased with how the lamp turned out, he asked me for another piece of black walnut board. He would not tell me why he wanted it. I gave it to him anyway. About 6 months later, my friend gave me the board back to me, and this is what he made for me. And you can see the letters, he actually made the grain of the wood into the letters. I was very, very proud of that. He took the board and carved letters that looked like wooden logs to read Willie Walnut. I also gave him a half walnut shell that he inlaid and glued into the board between Willie and Walnut. The board is one-of-a-kind keepsake that I will treasure the rest of my life. He is truly quite the artisan. Even though black walnut trees produce wonderful crop of nuts and products with a quality grade of lumber for making fine furniture, gun stocks, and it does have some negative points. The black walnut tree, Juglans nigra is its Latin name, is a very protective tree. You should never plant a garden or any crops near a black walnut tree because it will give off a poison that will kill off anything in its space. Also, anytime lumber is milled, and going to be cut black walnut logs into lumber, the mill cleans up all the sawdust from the other trees they have been cutting before they start on the walnut trees. The reason for this is because the lumber mill sells the dust to stables for bedding in the horse stalls. Black walnut sawdust is very toxic and will enter the horse's legs through its hooves and into its nervous system. This will kill the horses just from walking in the sawdust. When the mill is all done cutting the black walnut logs, all the dust is cleaned up and disposed of properly. Well, I didn't paint a very good picture for black walnut tree, did I? A black walnut tree is a very good shade tree and produces a fine product for lumber. The walnuts are very useful for human consumption and a food source for wildlife alike. I guess what I'm trying to say is if you decide to plant walnut trees on your property, give some thought to the location used for the multiple purposes. They are used for multiple purposes. Sorry.
All right, you're doing great, Bill.
I have 4 trees in my yard away from our garden, and everything is doing just fine. The glass factory where I worked for 27 years closed its doors in 2004 because of a major flood in the Glenshaw area. The closure became the main reason for me to quit selling black walnut baked goods and candy since most of my customers worked at the glass house. I quit buying the black walnuts in bulk from the Hammonds Company and just used the walnuts we gathered for our own use. There was a dry spell in our area for good black walnuts in 2008, 2009, and 2010 due to the weather. The following year was a very good year. Since I was completely out of nut meat, I took advantage of that and collected as many black walnuts as I could. I found some more trees locally and got permission from the owners to collect the nuts from their yards. In appreciation, I always made something like nut bread or fudge and take it to them for them to enjoy. Usually it is the first time they have ever eaten anything made from black walnuts. There's much time and labor involved in harvesting black walnuts. In all the years that I've done this, there is only one other person who I know that collects walnuts. Much on a much smaller scale. The nuts are out there for the taking, but most people just don't want to be bothered with all the work involved with it. These days, people are too busy with other things. This reminds me of our visit to Charleston, South Carolina, where my daughter Jennifer lives with my son-in-law and grandson Liam. When we go to the market district, this is where the vendors come to sell their wares to the public all year long. One interesting thing at the market is women with a few men of African descent. They sit and weave sweetgrass baskets. The folks that do this are older. And it's rare to see a young person practicing this art. Their wear is very tight weave and makes a very good quality product. They go out in the fields at harvest time where the sweetgrass grows and cut enough to last them until the next year's crop is ready. Unfortunately, the young people are not interested in weaving baskets. Someday it'll become a thing of the past and a lost art. It just kind of makes me realize that what I'm doing with my grandson involved in black walnuts as long as I can. I hope they keep the tradition I started alive. I enjoy black walnuts. It has become a passion, and I truly enjoy what I do and get out of black walnut harvesting. My, how time goes by in a blink of an eye. Since 2011, I have more experiences with black walnuts up until now. It is 2025, and a lot has changed. I no longer can use my hulling machine for cleaning nuts that I gather because I can no longer do the laborious task because of my physical condition that comes with aging. I am 78 years old and had back surgery in 2022. Still not 100% back to normal. My grandson Luke took the hulling machine for keepsake for all the years we used it. Maybe someday he will use it for himself. Wouldn't that be nice to keep the tradition going and process black walnuts for his own use? Since my baking and candy making days have come up with a few more ideas for using black walnuts. The first is making black walnut ice cream. It is simple to do and very tasty. I'll buy a half gallon of vanilla ice cream at the grocery store. Then I put it in a mixing bowl and put it into the microwave and keep heating it till it's soft enough to stir. Then I'll add a cup of chopped black walnuts and a teaspoon of black walnut extract and stir until it is blended in, and then put it back into the half-gallon ice cream container. Then I pour the cornflakes back into the container and refreeze it for the next day. Yummy. The next thing my eldest daughter, Jennifer Goldman, and I did with some black walnuts we picked up under the black walnut tree was removing the hulls off the nuts and set the nuts aside. We did this with about 50 of them and put the hulls in an old metal pot. I would check them every so often until they were all soft and black. This was the start of the process of making black walnut ink for writing with a fountain pen. This is the two of us that after we poured it down, cooked it down, and we're pouring it through a filter. Back in the colonial days, the early settlers would use black walnut ink along with ink made from berries of whatever was available. We took the hulls we collected in my pot and poured water into the pot till it covered the hulls. Then we put the pot on my turkey fryer burner and brought it to a boil, stirring the hulls every once in a while till the hulls got nice and liquid and black, about 35 minutes. Then we added 1 cup of white vinegar and cooked it for another 10 minutes, stirring the mixture until the vintage blended well. Then we turned off the burners and set the pot outside to let it cool down to a lukewarm temperature. Then we poured 1 cup of cheap vodka into the solution, stirring until we were satisfied it was mixed into the black walnut solution. We put the vodka in after taking it off the burner and letting it cool down so the alcohol would not evaporate. The reason the vinegar and the vodka was to keep the ink from turning rancid as it sat over time. The next step was to let the black walnut ink completely cool down so we could pour the ink into a cheesecloth to filter out any debris left in the pot. We did this 2 times and emptying any debris we collected in the cheesecloth. Now it was time to pour the black walnut into glass jars. And also, we took a fountain pen and wrote on a piece of paper with black walnut ink we made, and to our surprise, it had a brown color rather than black as we expected. For this reason, anytime you visit a historical sites from back in the colonial times and see documents that have brown lettering instead of black, they were written with black walnut ink. I bought a wood lathe that my wife Pat encouraged me to get to keep me busy in my retirement years. I built a workshop behind my garage in 2007. It is 20 feet wide and 22 feet long. My father-in-law gave me a large oak table he got from a school in West Mifflin, PA. It was used in the schoolroom for home economics. It had sewing machines attached to it for the girls to learn how to sew. The table is 42 inches wide and 8 feet long. It is made from heavy oak boards, no veneer or no particle boards, and it is very heavy. My lathe sits on one end of the table, and I made sliding drawer to keep my turning tools and supplies in. I make all kinds of wooden handles for pizza cutters, pizza servers, bottle openers, pie servers, ice cream scoops and paddles, letter openers, pepper grinders, shoehorns, wine bottle stops, fan light pulls. I also make a lot of different kinds of pens. One of my favorites is a deer hunter pen that has a buck with antlers on the pen clip. The tip of the pen looks like a bullet where the ink cartridge comes out, and the top of the pen looks like the primer of the bullet. To get the ink cartridge out of the bullet, you have to cock the rifle. I have made a number of these pens out of real deer antlers. I also make them out of black walnut wood. And I make a lot of, I use the black walnut wood because most gun stocks are made from black walnut. I taught my youngest daughter, Patty Gamola, how to turn in 2016. I turned a 4-inch pizza cutter I made for my wife out of black walnut, and when she saw it, she wanted me to make her one. I told her that I would get another kit, and there was enough black walnut I used for making the first one that it would make another handle. I told her how I would show her how to prepare it for turning, and she could make her own. I took her out and showed her on the lathe, standing behind her, and give her instructions on how to turn it. She was willing and eager to try it out. She did a great job of making the black walnut handle and made it a little bit different than the one I made. I knew after that she was hooked on turning on the lathe. Over the years, Patty and I have been turning in my shop with me, and it's been a great relationship for both of us. She's decided to make different items, so that we're not making the same things. About 4 years ago, I read an article. about tapping black walnut trees for making black walnut syrup. It's just like tapping maple trees for making maple syrup. I was intrigued, so the first year I tapped 5 black walnut trees just to cook the walnut sugar water I collected from the trees to make 1 gallon of black walnut syrup. The syrup is very sweet and has a nutty flavor. Very tasty. It has the same ratio as maple syrup, so you need to collect 40 gallons of sugar water to boil down to get 1 gallon of syrup. The next year, I tapped 22 trees and got enough sugar water to make 2.5 gallons of syrup. When you tap the black walnut trees, it doesn't flow as freely as the maple trees because the walnut sugar water has pectin in it, and it is thicker. The following year, I was going to tap 30 trees, but had back surgery in December. Oh well, there's always next year. You tap the trees the first week of February. You need warm days above freezing and cold nights below freezing for the sugar water to rise and fall. This is what makes the sugar water run into your taps and collect into your containers you hang on the trees. And I have the tap straw going into the lid on the container. Once the temperature rises above freezing and stays there for about a week or so, the sugar water will quit flowing and the season is over. You never know how long that will last. Mother Nature. That's when you pull out your taps, clean your equipment for next year. You don't have to do anything with the holes because they will heal themselves. After cooking it down, you pour your syrup into jars or containers, and this is what it looks like. When it comes out of the tree, it looks like water. It's that clear. I have enjoyed all the things I have learned about black walnuts over the years and hope to have more experiences in the future. Thanks for listening to my memoirs about black walnuts. If you have any questions or comments, please email. Would love to hear from you. My email address is walnut443@yahoo.com.